On this edition of Early Look, I'm going to be previewing the lightweight fight taking place UFC 296 December 16th between Tony Ferguson and Paddy Pimblett as part of the big Edwards-Covington card. And if you never watched a show before, I'm going to go through a bunch of different stats, a bunch of different intangibles, and then I'm going to give you my pick at the end. Some of this stuff, it may have relevance to you. It may not. That's for you to decide at the end of this video. Want to hear in the comments who you are picking and what your exact prediction is. But let's do a quick tail of the tape here between these two. Tony Ferguson, you can see there, El Kukui, 25-9, Paddy Pimblett, 20-3. 39 years old to 28, so big age gap there. 5'11 to 5'10, 76.5 to 73. So Ferguson going to be a little bit taller, and we'll have a bit of a reach advantage in this fight. And that's actually where we're going to start first in this video, is with El Kukui, Tony Ferguson. So you can see there, 25-9 record. I should mention this is a lightweight fight on the main card of UFC 296, so only a 3-round fight. Ferguson's got 12 knockouts, 8 submissions, and 5 decisions. I mentioned it there, 39 years old, 5'11 with a 76-inch reach. So he's he's got a 1-inch height advantage and a 3.5-inch reach advantage. Ferguson is not currently ranked in the top 15 of the lightweights. He did, however, win season 13 of The Ultimate Fighter, and he's the former UFC interim lightweight champion in 2017. He's also a BJJ black belt. Ferguson did not have an amateur debut, went straight to the pros all the way back in April of 2008. So he's been around for a while, made his UFC debut in July of 2011. Where are we here? Because those were exhibition. Yeah, June 2011, not July. Got my dates mixed up there. He's got a lot of notable wins in his career. That's one thing with Ferguson. I know right now not looking so good, but a lot of notable wins here. Let's go through some of them. Josh Thompson was a very good win at the time, defeating him by decision. You got Edson Barbosa. You've got Rafael dos Anjos, the former champion. You've got Kevin Lee, which is the interim title fight. Anthony Pettis, Donald Cerrone, and that's kind of where things end. He's had a lot of losses, but some of the notable ones include he's suffered a loss to Michael Johnson back in the day, but this losing streak right now, 6 straight, shades of BJ Penn here. Justin Gaethje, Charles Oliveira, Beneil Dariush, Michael Chandler, Nate Diaz, Bobby Green. The one thing you can say about Tony Ferguson's losing streak, you know every single one of these fighters. They're all notable, so it's not like he's losing to bad fighters here. For the most part, these are all really exceptional fighters, some of these even in the title picture, so do have to point that out as well in terms of what Tony Ferguson is bringing to the table in this fight. He's had a couple layoffs in his career, but overall, he's been really active in his career. I know he's had a few injuries here and there, but if you look at the longer layoffs he's had, going from Dariush to Chandler, there was a 358-day layoff, and then going from Nate Diaz to Bobby Green, there was a 322-day layoff. This will be the second fight for him in 2023 after losing to Bobby Green back in July. So actually, it's a pretty quick turnaround. This is one of the fastest turnarounds he's had in quite some time. I mentioned the injuries there. Supposed to fight Khabib Nurmagomedov at UFC on Fox 19, whereas this back in April of 2016. Got to go up a little higher here. You can see there, had an injury there. That was undisclosed, and he was supposed to fight at UFC 223, tore his knee ligament. That was in April of 2018. That was the fight that I believe led to Khabib fighting Al Iaquinta, which was supposed to be Max Holloway, and then it got switched up as well. Tony's never had any fights that were controversial or anything. It's been pretty much straightforward, so no close decisions. Let's go look at his stats here. Tony Ferguson, you can see significant strikes landed per minute, 4.98. That's actually pretty high. His striking accuracy is only at 45%, though, a little bit lower. Striking defense at 56%, so he does get hit a little bit. And then his takedown average is 0.42. Takedown accuracy only 35%, so not getting many takedowns there, but his takedown defense is at 66%. Sub average is 0.9, which is not very high either. And before we get to talking about Paddy Pimblett, got a quick word from our sponsor. All right, let's take a quick break and talk about today's sponsor, Aura. You guys remember a couple months ago, I had my data compromised. I wish I had a service like Aura back then. And even right now, I am still getting a number of spam calls. Check this out. This is on my phone. You're seeing all the blocked numbers. I'm sure you're like me and you get spam calls all the time. And that is because data brokers are selling your information to robocallers, spammers, and others who want to learn more about you, like where you live. Aura can identify data brokers exposing your info and submitting opt-out requests on your behalf. And get this, brokers are legally required to allow you to opt out, but they make it extremely difficult to do so, and that's where Aura can come in and save the day. Aura does so much to protect you and your family from online threats that you can't see. It's really easy to set up, so you don't have to download several different apps to get things like parental controls, antivirus, VPN, password management, identity theft insurance, and more. You get everything at one affordable price. Let Aura do all the hard work, keeping you safe online so you can focus on other tasks with a peace of mind. Click the link in my description of this video to get a 14-day free trial. That's aura.com/James Lynch. Just for your curiosity, I'm sure you want to know if your data is out there and people are using that to make money. That's kind of bad news, right? So I would recommend going to check that out for the free trial. The choice is yours. You can continue to let people exploit and profit off your name and information, or you can sign up for this free trial and take a step in the right direction of online security. I'll leave that up to you. All right, let's talk about Paddy the Baddy. You can see there, 20-3 record. Quite the personality in the octagon. Paddy Pimblett is 28 years old. He's 5'10" with a 73-inch reach, so he'll be 11 years younger than Tony Ferguson. No physical advantages in this fight. He's got 6 knockouts, 9 submissions, and 5 decisions. Like Ferguson, he's a BJJ black belt. He's the former Cage Warriors featherweight champion. He's got performance of the night 3 times against Luigi Vendramini, Rodrigo Vargas, and Jordan Levitt. Pimblett, like Ferguson, didn't have an amateur debut, went straight to the pros in October of 2012, which Ferguson was already in the UFC at that point. Just shows the age gap there. Made his UFC debut in September of 2021, which was a successful one against Luigi Vendramini, the fight I referenced earlier. He's 4-0 in the octagon. He's got 3 stoppage wins. The thing with Paddy Pimblett, you got to mention, he doesn't have a single notable win. Even Jared Gordon, not a ranked opponent. None of these guys are ranked. So that's one of the knocks on Paddy. Has not fought great competition. He will be fighting a notable opponent here in Tony Ferguson, and obviously doesn't have any losses in the UFC either. This is actually going to be the longest layoff he's had in his UFC career. So going from Jared Gordon to Tony Ferguson, there's going to be a 371-day layoff. So that's one thing you got to consider in this fight that we haven't talked about. Ferguson, how will he deal with the time outside the cage? We're going to find that out in this fight. He actually had to get ankle surgery after the Jared Gordon fight. That's why he has been out of business there. Paddy Pimblett's fought in a number of different weight classes. Got to mention that as well. Paddy Pimblett has fought 5 times at bantamweight. He's fought a catchweight 3 times. One was 136.8. He missed weight. And then there's another one was 141.7 missing weight. And then 152. He's fought at featherweight 7 times. He's fought at lightweight 8 times. One thing with Tony Ferguson, pretty much just fighting at lightweight his career. Never fought at featherweight to my knowledge. Let's talk about some close fights with Paddy Pimblett. One I will mention that wasn't in the UFC that I think we have to bring up anyway was this Cage Warriors win in November of 2016 against Julian Erosa, who's in the UFC, and obviously Julian's a featherweight. There was 3 media members in that fight who scored it for Erosa. A lot of people felt like Erosa did enough to win that fight, so that was one that probably should have gone the other way. The Paddy Pimblett Jared Gordon fight, his last fight, is one that we have to talk about as one of the worst decisions we've seen in a while. We saw, obviously a lot of outrage online. And if you go look at MMAdecisions.com right now, you can see the scorecards here. One person, not going to say his name on here, scored it for Pimblett. Everyone else scored it for Jordan. 23 people to be exact scored this fight for Jared Gordon. So, I mean, look. There's not much to say, right? Like when you have this much of a one-sided decision, I think the judges got this one wrong. I personally thought Jared Gordon won as well. Tough for Jared Gordon losing that fight, but I think he should have got the nod there. So do have to bring that up when we're talking about Paddy Pimblett. Realistically, Paddy should be 3-1 in the octagon, not 4-0. Let's look at Paddy's stats here. Again, we don't have a lot to work with because he's only had a couple of UFC fights. Significant strikes landed per minute, 4.19, which is great. Striking accuracy, 46%. Striking defense, 41%. That's not good. He does get hit a lot. That is one thing you have to note with Paddy Pimblett is it hasn't been flawless, right? Even his UFC debut against Vendramini was able to tag him a number of times here. And that's something you just can't gloss over. His takedown average is 0.97. Takedown accuracy is only 25%. So again, these are the two numbers that really stand out here. Striking defense, 41%, so below average. Takedown accuracy, 25%. So he's not going to get many takedowns. Takedown defense is 56, so he doesn't get taken down as much as you like. His sub average is 2.4. In fact, most of Paddy's wins do come by submission, and that's something we'll talk about in a second. Let's go take a look at the odds. Right now, you can see Paddy Pimblett minus 325, Tony Ferguson plus 260. So the odds, Paddy Pimblett about a 3-1 favorite. And if this fight was a couple years ago, there's no way the odds would be what they are. It's the fact that Tony Ferguson has lost so much. He's on a 6-fight losing streak. Why the gap is so wide. And I will say this right now, the odds are way too high on this fight, if I'm being honest. Even if you're fading Ferguson here, I still think the odds are too high in Paddy's favor here, just because Paddy hasn't proved a lot, right? He hasn't not fought the competition that Ferguson has. And if you go and look on Tabology as well, you're going to see here it's much closer: 62% for Pimblett, 38% for Ferguson. So if you're using these stats here, as far as the odds, Paddy should only really be like a 2-1 favorite, but. Obviously, a lot of people hammering that Paddy line. And Paddy's a fan favorite, right? That's probably some of the reason why he's such a big favorite as well. But let's get to my pick on this fight. Okay, don't think it's any shocker here. listen, I think it's cool that Tony's working with David Goggins. I was thinking of doing a video on that as well, but I mean, that's not really going to help him here. Cardio is not an issue for Tony Ferguson. It's age and it's injuries and it's accumulation of damage. It's a lot of different things that's why Ferguson is in this spot here. And he's 40 years old and there's no signs of him turning a corner here, despite that one round he had against Michael Chandler, which people always bring up. I still don't think that's enough to beat Paddy Pimblett. So I'm going to go Paddy Pimblett in this fight, but this may surprise some people. Maybe it won't. I mean, if you watch enough of my previews, I kind of do lean this way a lot of times. I'm going Paddy by decision for a couple of reasons. Here's my reasoning here before you start shouting at your screen. Number one, this is a 3-round fight. If this was 5 rounds, I might feel a bit differently. Paddy Pimblett, well, let me mention here. Tony Ferguson's losing streak. Let's have a quick look at this, okay? 6 straight losses, okay? One thing to note here, only 2 of his stoppage losses, right? He's been stopped how many times? 1, 2, 3, 4 times, okay? 4 out of the 6 losses are stoppage losses, which is concerning, which would lead more to the Paddy finish. But check this out. Bobby Green, that was a super late finish in the 3rd round, 4 minutes and 54 seconds. Or sorry, not late, but it was still a 3rd round finish is kind of what I'm getting at here. Of these stoppage losses, this was in the 5th round, this was in the 4th round. The other 2 were earlier. So 2nd round, 3rd round. Kind of the point I'm getting at, Ferguson's not a guy that's easy to finish early on. You don't see any 1st round finishes here, right? So we can throw that out the window. I don't think Paddy's going to finish Tony in the 1st round. Maybe if Tony has really fallen off a cliff, then yeah, that happens here. I think Tony can survive enough against Paddy to potentially go the distance here. Here's the other thing. He gets the he gets the TKO loss to Justin Gaethje in the 5th round. Now, granted, that Tony Ferguson's different than the one we're getting here today, but still, a guy like Justin Gaethje, who's extremely dangerous, could only finish Tony in the 5th round. That, to me, says he's a bit durable. The Chandler knockout was a kick to the face. A lot of fighters are getting knocked out by that. Paddy Pimblett's not going to do a kick to the face knockout. And then the Bobby Green was a submission loss. Nate Diaz was a submission loss. Again, I know a lot of Pimblett's wins are by submission, but I don't think, like Nate Diaz and Bobby Green, I think are light years ahead of Paddy Pimblett on the ground, in my opinion. Maybe not light years, but I would think they were better at jiu-jitsu than Paddy Pimblett is, despite the black belt. I just don't see, Pimblett being a huge threat on the ground against Tony, who also himself is a black belt. And these were later finishes as well. I don't see that happening. So that's something to note as well. Tony Ferguson's losses, if you look at them here, 44% are by decision. That's the leading cause of him losing. It's usually by decision. So again, that leads more to the fact that I could see this fight hitting the scorecards. The second place is submission, 33%. First is 22%. So Pimblett's known more for submission wins as opposed to knockouts, but still only 33% of his losses are by submission. That's not enough for me to pick Paddy by submission. Now, on the flip side, Paddy's wins, 50% of them come by submission. I just don't, but that's against subpar competition. Ferguson, yes, I know he's fallen off a cliff, but he's probably the best. Well, no, he is the best fighter that Paddy's fought. Even on this decline, I would say that as well. Ferguson also has 3 submission losses in 34 career fights. Like, that's a huge number discrepancy there. So in other words, he doesn't get finished that much in his fights. Ferguson, like I mentioned, has fought far better competition. I mean, you look at the names here. All these names, for the most part, would beat Paddy Pimblett in a fight. I think even in his wins, a lot of these fighters would beat Paddy Pimblett. I think Dos Anjos would beat Paddy Pimblett. I think Kevin Lee with one knee would beat Paddy Pimblett. Anthony Pettis, maybe. That's debatable. Same thing with Cerrone. But again, Pimblett has fought better. Ferguson's fought better opposition. And then we have to not ignore the fact that Jared Gordon beat Paddy Pimblett in his last fight. Like, I think there's no questions asked there. And if you can't beat a Jared Gordon, it's pretty tough to say that you're going to have a really impressive performance against Tony Ferguson. So I'm only picking Paddy here. And, after saying all that, the only reason I'm picking Paddy is because I don't see a path to victory here for Tony Ferguson. I don't think he's going to outland Paddy Pimblett at this stage in his career. I don't think he's going to sub Paddy Pimblett. Ferguson's never had knockout power. Like, if this was a case of even Paddy fighting someone like, let's say, Alex Hernandez, who has knockout power, I might lean more towards Hernandez in that situation because he has the ability to knock Pimblett out. Ferguson's not knocking out Paddy Pimblett. I would be very surprised if that happens. I don't think he submits him, so it likely goes the distance. And if it does, you saw what happened last time. Pimblett got the decision. I think the same thing happens here. So I'm going Paddy Pimblett decision, but maybe Ferguson turns back the clock. Probably not, though. The data does not lean that way. I'm sorry, but you're getting a fighter who is 39 years old. It just doesn't change at that stage in his career of him flipping the switch there. So I want to know what your prediction is in the comment section below. Who are you picking here? Who do you think gets it done? I want a prediction, not a pick. I would love to hear how you think this fight is going to play out. Again, I think I speak for most of us where it would be a great story if Tony Ferguson wins, but that's not enough for me to pick him here. I got to be objective. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @Lynch on Sports. I'm James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.